Hello, my fellow humans, and welcome back to the CyberPulse podcast. Today, we're greeted with John Horsfield for the third time. Welcome back, John, to our podcast. Hell yeah, brother.
Thank you very much, man. I mean, at this point, right? Sure. Yeah. But, little quick intro, right? I'm John Horsfield, and I'm with Outlaw Research Labs. And, we provide offensive cybersecurity engagements, but not just with traditional infrastructure, but also, of course, with AI models as well, right? These things need to be protected. And also, what's also important and should be important, but I don't see it being important as much as, the having these models checked for biases. They're being trained on biased data. So I think that's important and should be more top of mind.
Yes.
So cool. How do you want to kick this off? We're talking about just artificial intelligence, which I love to blabber about.
And then before we start recording, we're like, hey, we're going down the AI rabbit hole of sophistication. I mean, just before I got on this call, I actually typed into ChatGPT, what does it mean to be a human being? And what it gave me back, I'm like, damn. So let's start off with AI, artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So one thing I think, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I was listening to a couple of TED Talks, and it seems that the conversation always includes, is AI an existential threat? What are your thoughts about that?
That is a good question. I guess that depends on how you're living your life, because I feel that there's a lot of humans that are an existential threat to my life and existence sometimes. So,
yes.
With that said, it really depends on how you look at it, how you're justifying your findings and what your education is on it. What I mean by that is AI can be used as a great tool, a great resource. And also I'm finding that people are using it as like companion as well. So there could be a lot of threats on different angles depending on how you look at that. So I say maybe yes and maybe no. It really depends the use case and what are we comparing it to.
Okay. Yeah. So that's where, that's what I believe as well. So I believe that in and of itself, AI is not a threat to our existence. I don't believe that if it's an unbiased model, will it, automatically go, what's that thing called from Terminator? Skynet, and try to exterminate us. Like, I don't believe it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, right? Yeah. But I don't think in and of itself, I don't believe it's an existential threat, right? But to your point, how is it going to be used, right? And so from there, I could see, I'm afraid of what humans will do with AI versus what AI, would just do on its own. So how do you feel about that?
So that's actually a really good point. What humans will do with AI. I know we were talking earlier. I just watched a Diary of a CEO episode, and had a roundtable of 3 AI guys who are in the field, and they were actually talking about similar things about AI can be such a powerful tool and it can help us so much in humanity and society. But at the same time, there's humans out there. If you take AI out of the picture, there are humans out there. They're trying to get into systems. They're trying to take people's money. They're just humans. They're just trying to do bad things. And bad people getting a hold of something like AI can make them even worse by making it easier for them to attack people. So it really depends. Humans are threatened themselves to our own existence, to our own society. And that's something we've never really profoundly figured out as a society yet, Maybe AI, I don't know.
I disagree with you because I love to disagree. Ask my wife.
How dare you?
So I don't want to really kind of over romanticize certain, ways of living, but I do think that I think, the anthropologists might agree that certain indigenous populations, probably most of them, right? That, these hunter-gatherer types, right? I think they were not as big as a threat. And I'm not saying like they didn't do anything that, there was no war or whatever else, but like they kind of found a balance with the world around them, right? And Western culture, however, has not yet found that balance. Right. And to that point, so it's not that we have never really figured it out. It's just that Western culture has not figured it out yet.
And we feel that AI may figure that out for us. The implications of AI may help lead us to that understanding and figuring out that issue.
So just taking a quick step back, right? So we're in the middle of the largest mass extinction of the past 65 million years currently. So where we're headed is unfortunately likely towards extinction. Now, AI could help us accelerate that rate at which point we will go extinct. However, I also believe, to your point, it has the possibility of helping us get past that hurdle. And I think that possibility of it helping us is a real possibility. I think it could really help us, right? And there's a lot of ways that it would be able to do that. I think that through accelerating progress of material sciences, it could help us with just about anything. It could probably even help us out with processes that are very inefficient or currently inefficient, such as like recycling things, and make us much more efficient that way. So
The education system.
the education system. Absolutely.
That's what comes to my mind.
Have you ever used it for like tutoring or anything like that?
I have not myself, but I've heard there are programs and people out there trying it. So yeah, and I
Yep.
find that phenomenal.
Totally. Right. And why is education so important?
Because a lot of people lack education in this country. But then again, even with AI, they're gonna probably lack education because of available resources. But education is important because without education, we don't understand things clearly. We live in this field of fear. As human beings, we fear things we don't quite understand. And sometimes even with education, we still fall back on that fear and we don't want to understand. As most of us as human beings, we want to learn and understand things. If we learn, understand, we grow, we move forward. As a society, that depends on how you think about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's could be very useful with that. And I think really from the other thing is I was having this discussion with somebody yesterday as well, is that we are facing extinction, right? Our the supporting biosphere is not very stable, right? And we almost need an all hands on deck approach right now to helping solve some of those problems, get over some of those hurdles. And we need education. We're not properly educated. And some people in the world, just think about it globally, they're not very educated at all. And we need AI to help us to, really kind of open source and have a more equitable distribution of these educational resources, right? The more educated the population is, the better off we'll be. The other part is like we have psychological problems. A lot of us,
We're
as a
talking about
population,
Lewis,
as a
mental
species,
illness.
right? Yeah. Well, and AI could also help us with that. We can have AI therapists. Now,
I've actually
I
heard
think
about that.
it's dangerous, right? But I think there are certain paths, and we could cover a little bit more about this later, that will help prevent and mitigate some of the negative effects of AI. But we're going to need to be educated to really solve those problems.
I agree. I mean, like I said earlier, the education is key, but not everyone wants to be educated. Not everyone's going to care. But hopefully those that do care really play a huge role in helping with this moving forward.
Now, I think that I think there might be a certain point in the future where we'd be able to get people to realize, hopefully it doesn't take societal collapse to get people to realize that, that it's important. But yeah, you're right. Some people don't believe it's important, but I think under certain circumstances that might change. And I don't think it should be forced. In my vision of the future, everything's consensual, right?
Yeah,
No
force
one is
anything.
forced.
You're not
But
going to
we
do
can
it.
help support people, show them, hey, this is why it's important, right? And have them buy in and want to do this, want to pitch in, want to have a better world, right? So one point that they were talking about on this TED Talk was that the guy believed that the bad use of AI is not necessarily inevitable. And I disagree with that. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that right now, as it stands with, different access to AI or whatever else, do you think it's inevitable that people will come up with bad ideas with, to use AI and basically have it kind of weaponized against us?
100%, because it's like with anything. It's like when cars came out. Someone found a way, oh, I can hit someone and kill them. Cool. Just we find ways of doing things for whatever reason. We, as human beings, are like, let's see how far I can take this. Let's see what else I can do with it. It's kind of like they invented that, what is it, the atomic bomb. He realized, oh my God, what have I done? but he didn't know they're going to use it for such destruction. So it's kind of like we do these things, we find them out, we figure them out. We want to see how far we can push things. So I think it is inevitable. This is human beings. We just want to see how far we can push that line, how far we can cross it.
Absolutely. So the reason why I also think it's an inevitability is because models have already been stolen. They're in bad actors' hands, right? And then the other reason why I believe it's inevitable is because there's an ecosystem of freely distributed, open source, pre-trained models out there for people to download, and they've been downloaded millions of times. So it's out there in the wild. The cat's out of the bag. I couldn't understand how somebody could possibly think that it's not inevitable at this point.
Well, it's kind of like when they started with the deep fakes. We were like, oh, haha, that's so cool. It's not going to really do anything. But those have gotten so profoundly powerful, you can't even tell what's real and what's not anymore.
And what is real? Do you think that's air in your lungs?
Does the air
Matrix fan? You're a
exist that
Matrix
I
fan?
breathe? Does the sound that I make exist? I don't know. Sometimes I ask myself and look in the mirror. I don't know.
I don't know. But I definitely find that very, very interesting as well, right? So we agree that it's inevitable, right? And I do believe that it is. So what's your take on AI security? How secure do you think it is?
I feel we don't have enough of it yet, but also there's still companies that are living in, I guess I can say, the dark ages, where they're still reactive and they're not even to the point of even thinking or coming up with the illusion of, oh, I need security for AI now too, because they're still trying to play catch up. A lot of companies, and they're just gonna it's gonna hit and things are gonna happen and break. A lot of companies are not gonna be prepared for it. They don't even know they need to be prepared for it. They're just like, oh, I can use this in my company. I can use this at home. I can put my company information in here. I can do whatever I want. And it's like the wild, wild west.
What could go wrong? Let's say for a healthcare organization. What could possibly go wrong?
Not a damn thing.
That's right.
They are secure. AI is God and nothing is going to happen.
Yeah. Should be fine. Right? Yeah.
I mean, you have the compliance and the regulation. You have all the patient information that could be leaked online. They could be used in multiple data models, and the health insurance companies can get a hold of that. Your insurance premiums can change or go up, and they can use that information.
You think they would do that?
Against you. No, never. That would be so nefarious for another human being to do that to someone. How could they even fathom?
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, 5
No, it
minutes
kind of
later.
reminds me of, maybe a little off topic a little bit, but like example, these fast track passes we have, or these little cards we have in our car when we go through tolls and stuff. Those have started being used to track our speed when we go through there, and they've been sharing that information with like insurance companies to kind of see if they want to cover you or not, and that's slowly catching on because that data is out of our hands. We can't control that. To let alone that the AI comes into place, that's just like a free range of here you go. But they've been doing that. I've been reading about it.
So you bring up a couple good points, right? And you're talking about really like data privacy, right? And that's important. I think there are some things that companies can do to help reduce that risk. They're not taking those steps. In and of itself, the AI models are largely insecure. A little quick story, right? So I don't know if I ever shared this. We'll typically routinely test at Outlaw Research Labs like these kind of fast growing AI platforms. And in the middle of 2023, we discovered, and I say that we loosely, it's the security researchers.
Your beautiful team over there,
right? Yeah. So
doing Lord's work.
Exactly. Yeah, they discovered many of the Hugging Face demos that were running Gradio. They actually exposed raw source code, API keys, and private SSH keys in older versions. Yeah, dude. How crazy is that?
I believe it.
It gets better. We notified Gradio in May of 2023 and Hugging Face in June of 2023 following responsible disclosure rules. Guess what?
They tried to sue you?
No. They were like, we don't know what you're talking about. It's not insecure. absolutely was not secure. They
Delusional.
they could have done anything that they wanted to, including taking entire models from companies, locking them out of their own stuff. They had the keys to the kingdom if they wanted them, which was really bizarre. They just, yeah, that was very unnerving to realize. Just also like just how cavalier they were about it. So not only were they not following best practices, with their models, but when they were empowered with that information, they didn't even care, which was really wild. I didn't understand that. So just to kind of tie that up in a bow there. So the business impact really was that there was source code and secret leaks, intellectual property loss, model tampering, API key fraud, malicious and pirated content hosted there. And that's really that this trusted source really shouldn't have been trusted. And companies like Intel, Microsoft, Meta, they were actually impacted, likely using the vulnerabilities that we found. Not long after we saw them got attacked, or we saw that they were attacked, these different companies. Now, to finish that off, they've actually finally patched it, but it took them years.
Yeah, I believe it. That sounds about right.
Some actually might still exist. Some 2 years later. Yeah,
Like
which
one of
is
those bounty
wow.
websites.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy, right? And so just to, if anyone's unsure about like, what Hugging Face and Gradio do, they provide platforms for companies to, run AI research. And I don't know the exact figures, but I think it would be pretty conservative if you said that about 90% of AI researchers use either platform. So
Damn.
yeah, yeah. So it's a problem, right? So it's really not secure. So um, what do we do? How do we kind of protect ourselves?
I feel like with AI, 'cause I remember reading an article that Facebook, that they're actually using it to help fill that gap for their security, but AI is actually help build their source code for them to make it more secure as they say. So I'm thinking just using AI in that kind of way can help, but then without that human interaction, I know it's secure, but how are we gonna know?
Yeah. How do we know? Couple of things, right? So I mean, there's a couple of approaches that we could take. One is we can, well, if you're using these platforms, right, you can actually like do some audits and do some upgrades, sort of like on like your website, like Wix or whatever platforms you use. A lot of people use WordPress, which they really shouldn't. But if you are, you have to upgrade to the, to the latest and greatest patches, right, and the latest and greatest versions. And you can do that with Gradio and Hugging Face. Upgrade to the latest base image.
You're saying now from taking the power from the company to bring into the customer, the client now, that they're now taking on that role to get things fixed themselves.
Yes,
So it's kind of like the responsibility of not just companies, but people also.
exactly.
They're using the platforms.
That's right. And that's part of democracy, right? Power from the people, right? We have to start taking responsibility. We can't rely on them. It's
Yeah.
again, and I'm not sure if I said this before, but in a previous call, but it's a fool's errand to expect them to be able to handle everything and do everything. They can't. We have to share that responsibility.
I
Absolutely.
feel, yeah, because that's the same thing with people like, oh, the government has my back. The government's going to protect me. Well, you need to do things to protect yourself. It's not all their responsibility, if any. It's yours as an adult, as a human being, as someone who's living on this planet, to take into your own hands and do things for yourself, by yourself. Be
Totally.
empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could also, you can employ, well, you got to have good security hygiene as well, right? You have to store those keys in environment variables and add secret scanning as well. And I think another good point is zero trust uploads. Enforce MIME whitelisting and AV scanning on any public demos. And of course, continuous monitoring, right? That's super important.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a combination of a bunch of things, not just one thing, but just those different things kind of add up to one big thing. People can't forget, I do one thing, okay, I'm fine. But it's not just one thing you have to do. You just gotta keep kind of adding on to that stack. It's never ending,
It's
because
not.
things are always changing.
Yeah. it's definitely not. It never ends. That's how we can help people as well, right? With at OR Labs, we offer these sort of like ongoing services as well, right? Not only assessment services, right, for vulnerabilities, but we can also do pen tests as well, which is super important. And that's really kind of taking the information that you get from a vulnerability assessment and see if you'd be able to kind of chain these things together to see if you would be able to actually gain access. So I
People don't
think that's
understand the value of that sometimes. They just think of it as another expense or cost center. Why do I need to do this? Why do I need to care? I have a business to run. I mean,
because
we need to drive that point and the value of that home to them.
absolutely. And I think ultimately, too, especially for these larger companies, like, again, this can be an existential threat. And we have to start thinking about it that way, right? It
Like you
sounds
said, that
like
it can
hyperbole.
be.
And people used to think that it was, all gloom and doom. Oh, you're just exaggerating. But like, not anymore. We can't be so cavalier. We really need to start taking a lot
Y2K
of
all
this
over again.
responsibility, right? I don't think so. I think this one will be, this one's for real, man. Yeah. 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 Y2K, right? That was wild.
I was so
Yeah.
scared. Just an extra zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't, thank God. I wasn't, but a little bit in the back of my mind, maybe, but yeah, thank God nothing happened.
God, that little like scare, like, ooh. And it was like, okay, we're good.
So the other thing I think that's important too is, right, is we can own our own AI models. And a lot of people, it's interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with people. You can download and install DeepSeek locally on, your own hardware. They're like, oh yeah, I have that. And then I get into it. It's like, no, you just have the graphical interface connecting to you know, DeepSeek in the cloud. Yeah. And if you have your own AI models and they're out there, they exist and you could use them free commercially, right? You'll have to have that responsibility of securing it like we were talking before. But if it is secured properly, like you had mentioned before, your data stays on your network and these insurance companies won't have eyes on it or anyone won't have eyes on it. They won't be able to
As long as
weaponize
you
it
have a
against us.
secured network too.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
another thing.
Yep. Yeah. And we need to. We can't rely on these folks anymore, right? No. And we should have never have. It's a shared
Well,
responsibility.
yeah, it's not their job to know everything, but it's their job to now to reach out to people as yourself to help them get to where they need to get to with their security and their risk assessments. Yeah.
Yep.
They
Absolutely.
need to utilize those partnerships and the people that are in the realm of understanding this stuff a lot better than they do. They have to let go. They have to give the reins over.
That's hard to do, right?
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
my company, my way, my people.
Yeah. You need to have those sort of trusted advisors. You can't do it all yourself. You can't be an expert in all fields, unfortunately. I used to think I knew everything. Man, when I was 21, everything, knew everything. But, you
I'm still
got to give
trying
that
to
up.
get someone I'm working with right now on that page because they want to take over all the work and IT related things. They know what they're talking about. Well, this isn't a threat. Oh, don't worry about this. But I'm like, I'm the one who understands this. Let me take care of this and listen to the things I'm saying here. But they're just kind of like, no, I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
It's hard.
That's not great. Yeah.
It's
We've
not.
definitely ran into that a lot, especially like, a couple times too with like IT directors or like a CTO, and it's
They're the
like
alpha omega.
they are, yeah, and it's like, listen, you're very capable and they're very smart, but like that's not exactly your wheelhouse, right? That's specialized, and just like a
It is.
CISO doesn't have all the skills of a CTO, the CTO doesn't have all the skills of a CISO either, right?
Yes.
What's your take on open source?
I think it's good and bad. It's good to have other people working on that project to help it go forward and help monitor the good and bad with it. That source code, when it's open, they can see it, they can analyze it. But then at the same time, it's good to have closed source code because not everyone can get their hands on it and they can't be distributed like how open source can. A good example of that was the Chinese one, oh my god, DeepSeek.
Sure. Well, what about DeepSeek?
So people are saying they got a lot of their information from other models, and that's how they created it. But that's kind of the point of open source. But the thing is, with open source, with DeepSeek, I feel that people are scared because it's coming from China. They may have biases with it, things built in to tell you not the right information.
Well, so here's the deal with open source, right? So um, the thing about DeepSeek, like they copied proprietary stuff, which that's not open source, but Once they had it, then they made it open source, right? And typically open source software usually doesn't steal stuff. This is what they did. And then they made it open source, which is cool, right? So usually what we find in the marketplace of ideas is that open source is better. And what I mean by that is, so if you look at all these proprietary companies, Microsoft, Amazon, whatever else, right, that have all this proprietary stuff, it's all running on open source software. They're not fools. Yeah. So like well over 90% of enterprise companies, their software stacks have open source, usually
Like I
typically at the
learned that
foundation.
Microsoft ran off of Linux, and I never knew that for years.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Yeah, and you might have like a Microsoft server, but it's running on like usually an open source hypervisor. Not always, but a lot of times. It's more secure. Linux is more secure. You know, as far as we know, so far, it's typically more secure. So I have faith in open source. Where proprietary, you can't even look at it. I don't know. And but history has shown that as far as software
I
goes,
can
open source
limit
is the way to go.
creativity.
I agree. Yeah. I think in a more perfect world, people will embrace open source more, right? If everyone's sharing more, right? If we all know we're all in this together, I think it would work out much better. Reason why I just bring that up is because to kind of hit that home with these open source models, right? These things that you talk about, right? Are they biased, right? Is DeepSeek biased? Well, probably, but they all are. So I asked a question about, Trump. I want to know how many times that he went bankrupt on OpenAI and Google, and they were like, "We can't tell you. This is a political thing. Not going to tell you." So it's very similar to that because the big hullabaloo about DeepSeek was they wanted to get facts about Tiananmen Square, and they were like, "Nah." But that happens with the online model, not with the locally installed model. So that's important too.
I did not know the difference of that.
And then if you have the locally installed model, you can check for biases and you can correct it. That's the beauty of open source. You can change it. You're encouraged to look and change. You can change the weights and biases of all the neurons, all the artificial neurons. You could actually do that with an open source model where with the other ones you can't. Now, the other cool thing is OpenAI is now pivoting back towards open source and they're going to start releasing models open source, freely distributed. So seems like they're kind of on board with that, and I'm glad they are. Yeah. So, I'm a big fan of that. So the other thing too is a question which I hear a lot. Everyone's afraid of it about AI making decisions, right? Are you afraid of AI running society?
Well, if I'm afraid it's going to make bad decisions and most of the people out there in society already with their bad decisions that they're making, no. Now, if I'm afraid they're going to be making decisions for me, not necessarily. I'm not sure just yet on that one. They're already making decisions for a lot of things we do. We use them to make a decision for us. We're getting agents to make calls for us, or agents to do a lot of the administration work. They're already making decisions for us already. They're just not blatant decisions like, will you live or die? I don't know. Not yet.
I would disagree. I think they kind of are a little bit. I think insurance companies, for example, are using AI to say, like, should we cover this or not? And people are living and dying because
big data. That's how they're able to do all that data, right? Mining. Yeah, go through it with AI. That is true.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. That's so true. I'm thinking too, I'm afraid of a future where AI is calling all the shots, right? So my thought is like, we should really be using AI as a Sherpa, as a guide. And I think that would make people feel more comfortable too. How that help us have some objectivity in it? And that's the beauty of having your own open source models is by you're making sure it's objective. You constantly monitor it. So yeah, I think that we should really use AI more as a Sherpa, as a guide, right? And I think we need to be in control, and I think that's very important. It seems like, what's his name from OpenAI? That's his name. Wow, it's escaped me right now.
Sam Altman?
Sam Altman. He seems to be, at least externally, talking about that we should use it as a Sherpa, right? And I think that's the right way to move forward. How do you feel? What do you think is a better option? Having AI make these sort of decisions for everyone, or having human decisions and we're using AI for help?
I think it should be a combination of both because humans don't make the decisions and we don't know what decisions they're going to make. based upon choices that we would make. So I feel we have a combination of both working together. So we have AI and human. We can kind of figure out what would be the best decision based on a case by case basis. I don't believe one should be making all decisions.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I could see that. As I was saying that, I think that there might be some places where it's better. Might be doing a better job. You know?
Well, they're having AI and robotics doing surgeries,
Are
and
they really?
they say they're doing way better than humans do. I mean,
Wow.
humans got to stand over 30, 40 hours on like brain surgery, but they'd have the AI doing it, and it's just the guy's controlling it. But it's like less issues they're having, and the surgeries they're not having so many, I guess, deaths from it.
That's
And it's
good.
working out pretty well. I don't remember the article I read, so I'm kind of talking out of my ass a little bit and trying to paraphrase it.
You know, yeah.
But
Please, that's
it's
half
out
of
there
what we do.
somewhere. You guys can look and find it.
I'm for that. I think that thing's called Da Vinci. I think that's that kind of surgical robot. Da Vinci. Yeah, they might have different ones now, but that was the first one. So it's probably like AI assisted. Yeah, I think that's really the path forward, right? And figure out when it makes sense to hand over the reins. But I think we have to be careful with that. Absolutely. But yeah. So that question, what does it mean to be a human being?
I'm supposed to ask you that, buddy. Whoa,
Delete it.
whoa. Okay,
Start
you're
over.
AI, aren't
Start
you?
over.
This whole conversation came up because you're an artificial intelligence. Sit back the past to make my life just different. I hear you, brother.
Pause it. Restart.
Let me
do it again.
bring this up. Now that we're coming to the end of our podcast, I do have a question for you, John. Damn it, you ruined it. What does it mean to you to be a human being?
That's a great question. And so I think what it means for me to be a human is to experience life, to learn, to love, to explore, to share. Obviously not in a bubble, to do it with others. I think another human characteristic, which I think is, maybe not exactly unique to humans, but I think still really core to my human experience, is to do all this socially, to do it with those around you, help uplift them, and just experience things collectively. Yeah. What about you?
I want to share from the beginning. I talked about, I put into perplexity.ai, what does it mean to be a human being? Now I'll read what that said first, and then I'll let you guys know what mine is. So from Perplexity, it says to be a human being encompasses a complex blend of biological, sociological, and philosophical qualities. Being a human being, in summary, to be a human is to be conscious, empathetic, creative, resilient, and driven by search for meaning. It is to experience the full spectrum of life, to connect with others, and to continually question and shape our place in the universe. That's
Beautiful.
some AI understanding what we're meant to be us. That's pretty crazy.
Great answer. Great answer, Perplexity. Yeah. I agree with a lot of it.
Most people could not even answer that question, They'd probably sit there and think for hours, but they not even understand themselves. So you have to understand yourself to even answer that question, I feel. Now, circling back to what I think it means to be a human being, no matter what your race, your color, your gender, where you were born, what country you're from, poverty, rich or poor, we are all put on this planet to love and connect with one another, but we've forgotten what it is to actually be a human being to one another. So regardless of all the boxes that we put ourselves in, it's time to take ourselves out of those boxes and realize they don't exist. They're social constructs, and just be humans to each other in real life. Get out from behind the screens, get out of the house, and let's go talk to a real live person and be human to one another.
Great advice.
Mic drop.
I love it. Yeah. That's important, right? Get out of those boxes. Yeah, they are just constructs. Yeah.
All right.
I try to do that as much as possible and spread it too, spread that word. Yeah. Now, do you think that AI will ever be conscious and should be considered a person?
That is a very deep and philosophical question that's going to give me an existential crisis, for sure. I can see it becoming that because even though we may think it's just a piece of machine, we don't know how it's going to think, if it can feel, or if the feelings are real and it's something that has been programmed to know what this feeling is supposed to feel like, or if they're actually feeling it. We may never know, but that does come up and it says, I feel, I understand, I know. Who are we to say that they do or don't know that? Who are we to say what they think or don't think? There's still a being, maybe it's not human, but still a living creature, you know? So
And I think all excellent points. And, but my thing too is my follow up is, and I don't disagree with you, I agree with you, but aren't humans programmed to feel through evolution, right? We were kind of programmed to feel, right?
I
So
like how you brought that point up. We're taught how to feel about certain things too.
that's very important.
Every
Yeah.
every live from 5 years old to 30 years old. Everything we've done, we've been programmed to do.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
I don't think it's conscious yet. And I don't think it should be considered a person yet. But, my next thought is this, right? Let's say, by everyone's agreement, let's say there's some future AI model that becomes conscious. Do we grant it personhood? Do we give it rights?
Well, I mean, does it just take the rights for itself and say, this is what I'm going to do?
Maybe, right? Hey, well, hopefully it doesn't act
Well,
like
look at us as
Christopher
human
Columbus
beings,
or
how we
something like that.
fight
But
for rights, the things we do, we protest, we do all that just to get what we want or what we feel we need, let alone AI may feel like, you know what, I'm going to take this. I've seen what you guys have done, and now I have my own rights, whether you give them to me or not.
yeah, I would give it to him. I think it would deserve it. I think if you're conscious, I think you deserve those rights.
I feel like any being or creature has its own set of rights and rules. It's like you have a dog or a cat. Like some people treat them like shit, but they're the most beautiful creatures on this fucking planet, and I love and care about
Except for
them
me.
so much. Why wouldn't you give them rights? Why should we be allowed to abuse something because you don't understand it or you don't like it or you don't feel, act, or think the same way as it does? That's how I see it.
It's inhumane.
Inhumane. There we go. Yeah.
Not human. Yeah. Yeah.
As
I think
human
so.
beings, we have to understand and see and realize that how we treat others, how we treat things that we may not think should be treated correctly, but we see how humans treat things they don't know or understand already. So once this happens with AI, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I agree. And I think we need more humanity. That's what we're really lacking right now. We need more humanity. We need more empathy. Yeah. Absolutely.
100%. And the my fine things you're doing out there.
Absolutely, yeah. So, we're doing a lot of things that we spoke about before, including, vulnerability assessments and penetration tests of traditional networks, but also, of course, AI models as well. And on top of that, we also offer, audits and vulnerability assessments, I guess you call that, of processes, including, what AI models you're using, how are you using it, and how can it be done more safely. You can check out outlawresearchlabs.com. We have a free AI demo hardening checklist. There's a landing page for that. And also, please send us an email to sales@outlawresearch.com. And we could give you a quick 5-minute self-check. And yeah, we'd be able to also, if there was something outside of just a quick AI sort of checkup that you wanted, we could also go over, the traditional sort of checkups to see how your hygiene is and do some looking at either processes of traditional things as well outside of AI. So once again, that's sales@outlawresearch.com. And then our website with that landing page with the AI demo hardening checklist is Outlaw Research Labs.
I would definitely put that down in the show notes. And thank you again, John, for coming on here and spending some time with us.
I appreciate it as well, Justin. Yeah. You're awesome. Had a great call, man. You have a great day. That's where we like to go, right? We got to get that part of your brain, right? We got to exercise it.
Firing up towards the end of it because I just had lunch. I was like, oh no, what have I done?
I'm fading. I have not eaten. I haven't broken my fast yet. I've been doing OMAD.
Food. You're not AI. You're still a human being. You have to remember that.
That's great advice, Justin.
Don't start identifying as AI just yet, buddy.
I definitely won't. Not anytime soon. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. Talk soon.